there, and welcome to Our Weekly Craft, a source for ideas, inspiration, and fun for crafters. I'm Sarah White, Chief Maker at OurDailyCraft.com, and today I want to talk about making our projects better. Now, I know whether you knit, sew, cross stitch, crochet, do woodworking, make candles, whatever it is, the crafts that you're into, that you make things that you like and that you want to use and all of that. But I feel like sometimes we make projects, we might be following directions for a pattern or something, and we make it to pattern or we follow the recipe or whatever. And like, it's okay, but maybe there are things we can do to make those projects even better, or to make things more in the way that we want them to be, to make them more useful or more fun, or so that we'll use them or wear them or whatever more. So I've been like doing a lot. This is going to be another sort of show and tell episode because I've been doing a lot of that lately. Like looking at, I guess because fall is coming on, it's been really cold this week. It's supposed to be warmer today as I'm speaking, but it was still cold this morning. So I put on my newly revamped Wave of Change pullover here. So this is a good example. This is not, necessarily where I was going to start, but the sleeves on this, when I initially knit them, were like this long, maybe. And I don't know, because I counted the number of ridges on the pattern, like in the pictures on the pattern, and I clearly had not knit as many repeats as she did, but I don't know if I knit to length and just trusted it to be right, or some reason didn't try the sweater on when I was knitting it, or what happened, but the sleeves were like definitely too short, and it annoyed me every time I wore it because this is like a super bulky yarn. It's it's supposed to be warm, and I couldn't wear it when it was really cold outside because the bottom of my arms were getting cold. And I don't feel like I have unusually long arms, but I always want sweater sleeves to be longer than the pattern suggests. So that's a thing I know about me now through many years of knitting, and I just need to try things on more and make sure that the sleeves are the right length. And then actually, even now you can see, like, I would like it to be maybe just a little bit longer, but since it has this pattern repeat in it, I didn't need a whole nother pattern repeat because then it'd be like this long. So this I can live with, but that's like an easy thing, right? That I know the sweater, I may have followed the pattern, I may not have, I'm not really sure, but it took a few hours to like unravel and knit back and make the sleeves a better length for me. And so that's kind of where I'm going with this, is like, it's not always things like you don't have to tear up a whole project, but what can you do with what you already have to make it better for yourself? So here's another example of that. This is probably like the easiest example that I have. This is a garter stitch, big boxy vest thing. This project, for all of it's not looking like much, has some memories for me because I started knitting it during an ice storm in 2009. It was there was a big, huge ice storm where I live. The power was out for several days, so I did a lot of knitting in the dark on this one. It was the first project I did holding yarn in the left hand because I was practicing my left-handed knitting at that time, which is why it's garter stitch. But that was also the weekend that my daughter was conceived, which I didn't know at the time, but I kind of feel like this is all tied up in my beginning of motherhood and remembering that time. There's a yarn end sticking out here. I don't know if you can see, there it is. I'm not sure which side was supposed to be. I think this is actually inside out right now because I crocheted the seams. It's really heavy, and it used to have sleeves, and I was trying to make, this was a project that I designed myself, and I was trying to make the sleeves long enough to have thumb holes, but I like way overcompensated, and the sleeves were like, I don't even know, they were like a foot too long, and they were immensely heavy, and the seams actually ripped out of the, like where it was attached to the sweater. And I think maybe part of the where this arm, where the sleeve was sewn together may have also ripped out. I only wore it once because the sleeves were so ridiculous, and it kind of fell apart on itself that way. And so I was like, well, I really want to wear that. You know, I've had it in my closet for years, not wearing it. So it's like, maybe if I just take the sleeves off, that'll be better, and then I'll be willing to wear it. And so I finally, the other day, ripped out the sleeves and unraveled them, and I have like a whole sweater's worth of yarn. The sleeves were, I shared it in my Instagram stories that day, but the sleeves were like as long as my legs. I'm gonna get a whole sweater that I hopefully will be starting really soon out of that sleeve yarn. And so now I have this, I mean, I don't usually make vests that are this like positive ease, but I've already worn it again. So, you know, I've worn it 100% of the times that I wore it before. Hopefully I will wear it more as like a layering piece this winter. It's wool, it's nice. So that was another example of just like, what can I do to make that okay so I can wear it, because I haven't been wearing it ever. And so that makes it, you know, so that it's a thing that I'll use. Now this is a sweater that I wear and love and have worn all the time, and it does have the thumb holes that were worked into the pattern, so I need to use this sleeve as a guide for length the next time I try to knit thumb holes. But my problem with this one was the collar. So it has this long, you can see kind of where I sewed it, but it has this deep, not quite a turtleneck, but a tall collar on it that it was supposed to, I'm sure it was supposed to stand up on its own, but I used a different yarn, and maybe I had a different gauge or whatever, but it was always floppy, and it kind of annoyed me. And like, I still wore it all the time, but every time I wore it, I'd be like messing with it and not super happy with it. So I just folded it over and tacked it down. That was like a 10-minute project. And it's so much better just because now I don't really have to mess with it, and it's gonna, I know that it's not like the wrong side's not gonna show, because even if it flops down, there's that extra part of the neckline folded in. But I think that it'll stand up on its own now when I wear it, because look how nice it looks on M. And so that was just like another thing. And I had, you know, I knit this maybe last year sometime, and I've worn it a lot, but every time I wear it, that's annoying to me. It's just like, okay, now is the time to fix that and make it okay. And, you know, I would have still worn it a lot anyway, but now I think, you know, I'll enjoy it more, right? Because it's like, oh, that thing that annoyed me is gone now, so that's great, right? And so that's part of it too. It's just like the things that annoy you. And that doesn't have to be in clothing, right? It could be, you know, you've got a pillow on your couch that the seam is ripped apart and the stuffing's falling out, and you just deal with it and stuff it back in and use it. Turn it so that that part is, you know, where no one can see it. Or, you know, maybe it's, you know, there's a space in your house, like your entryway is always full of kids stuff, and you could put holiday decor there instead. Or, you know, maybe it is, you know, you need to patch a hole in something or cover up a stain or whatever. Like, there are lots of ways that things can be a little annoying and can also be fixed without too much work. I can't remember now if it's Julia Cameron or who it is who calls that tolerations. It's just like the things that you tolerate, but they really annoy you. Like, you're just like, I'm not going to deal with it, but that is annoying. That bothers me. That is pain, that whatever, you know, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. So it doesn't have to be clothes. It doesn't have to be in something you made even, but something that's just like nags at you. Like, every time you use that thing, it's not as nice as it could be, or there's something you made that doesn't quite fit. Or I just noticed I've got a tail end sticking out here too. Let's tuck that back in. You know, and it can be something small or it can be something big. And so the last one that I have to show you is my Achu, which I've been working on for a very long time, as you know. It was probably in one of the first episodes that I shared it the first time. And you can see that this looks a little crazy right now. But what happened is I had knit the top in a different color. So it was white with sort of purple and yellow flecks, because the original pattern of this was used a speckled yarn on the top, and then it had a solid color in the bottom, but it was like they were the same yarn, but it was the speckled version and then the solid of the same colorway. And I didn't have that, but I had this gray. And I really wanted to make it a solid gray, but I wasn't sure that I had enough yarn. So I had worked the top in that other, and then worked the bottom. And then I realized when the body of the sweater was done that I definitely had enough yarn to do the whole thing in gray. So I stewed about it for a few months, and then I knit the top again in the gray. And then I took a long needle and picked up all the stitches where I switched colors originally, and then picked out each stitch all the way around in the first color, the original top part, so that I could remove that. And then I had my top part on the needle that I had been knitting, and my bottom part on the needle where I had picked up the stitches, and then I grafted it all the way around, which is a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. I did it wrong, although I didn't do it wrong, but my top and my bottom did not have the same number of stitches the first time around. And so you'll also see in here where I did some decreases to make sure that my stitches were the right. But my tension is not even on, it may not be even on the top versus the bottom too, but it's not even where I did this grafting. And so that's why there's this big loop here, because I'm like working on adjusting the stitches around in the hope that that will, and you can see here where I've done it, it's a little smoother. Because this is cotton, I was kind of hoping that it would block out a little bit, and it probably would if it were wool, but it's a cotton acrylic, so there's no like smoothing out the stitches by blocking. So I'm gonna go around and try to adjust that, and if that still is producing that harsh line, I'm thinking about doing like a few rounds of duplicate stitch, so like where it might be like a checkerboard in a different color, that will distract the eye away from those stitches being a little loopy. But I am on my last cuff, and I have been working on, I feel like I've been working on just this cuff all week, which is not true, but I've messed it up like several times. There's a decrease that happens right at the end, and so I first started doing it without doing the decrease, and then I did the decrease, but I then was doing 2x2 rib instead of 1x1 rib, and so I'm finally on the right track, and I've probably got about 10 rounds left. So I'm gonna for real finish this today, and figure out what's happening at that graft line. I gotta find some buttons because it's a Henley, and I'm so excited to wear it because Henleys are my favorite, and I've never knit one before. And I've just been working on this project for a really long time, and it was a big challenge to figure out how to do that grafting without having to re-knit the entire sweater. So I only did that top part again, you know, even though it took a few hours of work doing the sewing. And really, once you get into the rhythm of it, it's not as bad as it sounds, like grafting 200 stitches or whatever it was together. After a while, you do stop chanting how you do it to yourself, or I did anyway. And so that kind of was gratifying to be like, yes, I got this. I can do it without even thinking about it. But obviously the tension is a little bit of an issue. So I will have to see how that goes, and I will definitely show you. Maybe I'll wear it next week if I've got it all sorted out by then. But yeah, so I just encourage you, maybe it's not a sweater, maybe you don't knit sweaters. I have a lot of socks that need darning too. I guess I was in my sock drawer the other day, and there's like one of each sock, and I don't know where the other ones are. I'm sure they're somewhere in a pile of stuff that needs mending, but I need to track down all my spare socks and do some mending so I can wear my knit socks this winter. Um, maybe it's something that you made, and maybe it's not something that you made. Maybe it's a t-shirt that you love that has a hole in it and you need to do some visible mending on it instead of just looking at it and frowning every time you want to wear it because it's got a hole in it. Maybe it's appliquing something over a stain on your sheets, or a shirt or a pair of pants that you like that you're not wearing or using now because of that. And it can be wider, like I said, it can be bigger things. What are you tolerating that you don't need to? Big or small? What steps can you take to change that thing that's bugging you? And again, that can go really deep, right? Whoever it is, if it's Julia Cameron, or I think it must be, because maybe it's in the Artist Way, but I know that that's an exercise, is like listing 50 things you're tolerating. And when you think about it, you're probably like, I don't have 50 things, right? But as you get into it, you're like, oh yeah, there's a lot that annoys me or that I could change but I don't. Or and it can be simple stuff like the neckline on that sweater is floppy, or I hate that the kitchen counter is always covered with junk mail, or I hate that my kids leave their stuff in my car all the time. Or it can be, this thing about my job really annoys me, and I think, that we could do this instead and it would be better. Or, maybe it's my job really annoys me and I think that I could do something better. Or I need to rearrange this room so that there's a place for me to do yoga because it annoys me that I have to like scramble to find a space that's big enough to put my mat down, or whatever. I'm just making these things up, but what it is in your life probably that is tolerated that you wish you didn't have to tolerate anymore. So I encourage you to think about that, and like, what could you do to make it a little bit better? Maybe you can't knock down walls in your house or quit your job, or whatever the big like root cause thing is, but maybe you can do a little something to make it a little better. And if you have something like that, craft related or otherwise, I would love to hear about it and what you do to fix it. Because once you start looking at those things, and maybe it starts with mending a sock or covering a stain, but once you start thinking about those things, and that's why the power of that list is so important, it sort of shifts your mindset to like, you don't have to put up with those things, right? And like, especially when it's something that you made, like, you don't have to settle for done if it's not perfect or not, as good as you can make it or right for you or whatever, and if it means ripping out an entire sweater or sock or whatever because you'd rather use the yarn for something else, or, using, reusing fabric because you don't love the dress that you originally made with it, but you think you can make something for your kid that they would like better instead, or whatever it is. It can start with that and move on to, there's this thing in my house I don't like, there's this thing in my relationships I don't like, there's this thing my kids do I don't like. I mean, it gets a little rough when you're talking about other people's behavior, but maybe there's something that you can do to like nudge them in a different direction, right? Like my kids are always leaving stuff in my car. Maybe that's something that you can deal with in a way that's not too dramatic, but you have to be careful when you're thinking about, the things that annoy me or things other people do, because this is more personal and personal to you in terms of what you're tolerating, but also personal in the sense of things that you can fix yourself, right? But once you start thinking about it, I feel like it does shift your mindset to be like into those deeper things too. that you don't have to just put up with things because that's the way they've always been, or that's, always that's where we've always put the junk mail, or, that's where the Christmas tree always goes, or whatever. You have more power in your life than you maybe think you do. And realizing that and taking control of things that you can control is really powerful, and it can start with something simple like making the sleeves longer on your sweater. I know that seems a little crazy, but really, I encourage you to try. Come up with some little thing. Again, doesn't have to be a crafty thing, but something that nags at you, and try to make it better and see how that feels, and if there's something else you can do. And if you really want to dive into this experiment, make yourself a list of 25 or 50 things, as many as you can think of in 10 minutes, whatever you want to do. But make yourself a list of things that you let slide, things you tolerate, things you wish were different, and then see what you can do about it. Again, not everything can change, and not everything can change overnight, but there are things you can do to make your situation or your living space or your clothes or whatever a little better. And so I really encourage you to take a look at that and try it, and let me know how that goes for you. I didn't plan for it this week, but I'm kind of thinking about, instead of doing reading, watching, I don't know if anybody ever makes it this far in the videos anyway, but if you do, let me know. I'm thinking that instead of doing what I'm reading and what I'm watching, because it's often the same stuff week to week, that I would instead grab a book off my shelf and tell you a little bit about it, so we can get a little crafty bookshelf 1-minute book review kind of thing going on. I don't have anything, I'm looking around, I don't have anything handy that I've read recently, so maybe we'll start that next week if I remember to bring a book, and we can just end it there. I hope that you do try to make something in your life a little better this week, and that you have some time for crafting, and that you have a good weekend, wherever time it is as you watch this. And I will see you again soon.